Hello, guys. I just want to say, first of all, thanks so much for coming. Look, it's tough times for the left. I think we all can acknowledge that. But me personally, anyway, I'm just very much inspired by, seeing people who will show up. I'm also very inspired by the four people here who are going to be having a great chat later on. In the spirit of that, of people who show up, we have the national demo for Palestine on the. It's going to be on Saturday, 1 o'clock at the usual meeting space, and then we've also got a demo on the 22nd outside the central bank. We have to get them to stop facilitating the sale of Israeli war bonds. We're going to have a little bit of a Q&A after what's going to be a great chat here, but I'm going to hand it over to my good friend and colleague, Paulie, who is going to take it from there.
Welcome to the Ditch Dropside Meetup. Thank you all so much for coming. Give yourselves another round of applause for being here. Thank you. Cheers. My name is Paulie. I'm an investigative reporter at The Ditch, and I'm very happy to be here next to three very esteemed speakers. I'm joined by Catherine Connolly, who everyone here will know. Didn't even give my introduction and you applauded her. Catherine is a TD from Galway. As all of you know, she served as the last Ceann Comhairle in the last government, and she spent her career in politics as an advocate for human rights, for social justice, for democracy, and this week confirmed that she is running for President of Ireland later this year. I'm also joined by Ryan Grimm. Ryan Grimm is... Why did I even prepare intros? Ryan is apparently needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. He's a journalist and he's the author of multiple books. He's co-founder of Dropside News and previously worked at places like Politico and The Intercept. His latest book is The Squad, AOC and the Hope of Political Revolution, which discusses left-wing and progressive movements in the context of politics in the United States. We're delighted to have him here today. So thanks for being here, Ryan.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by Abubaker Abed. He's an incredibly brave journalist from Gaza who spent much of the last couple of years documenting from Gaza the ongoing genocide prior to arriving in Ireland earlier this year, and he continues to write about it, and he pops up in places like Dropside News, Ryan's site, and he provides a Palestinian perspective which is often missing, unfortunately, in media, and we are genuinely honoured to have him here. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate that. So we're going to talk for about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, possibly an hour. And we're going to discuss, I think, first and foremost, Western complicity in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. We'll talk about the United States and how it is arming a genocide in Palestine. We're going to talk about Israel, how it functions as an instrument of Western power. And we're going to talk about Ireland's role in all of this and how we as a country materially facilitate what's happening despite the claims made by people like the Taoiseach Micheál Martin and people like the Taoiseach Simon Harris. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say about all of that. I really want this to be a conversation, so if anybody has anything that they want to interject at any point, that is encouraged. Please do so. And to the audience, I would say, listen, if any of you have any questions throughout, please do not hesitate to wait until the end, okay, when it's question time. Okay? Have some manners. Thank you. Okay. So, look, it is safe to say that everybody in this room, like me, has been watching with horror at the events that have transpired since October 2023, when Israel began its ongoing campaign of genocidal violence in Gaza against a captive civilian population. But while people like me have been watching these events unfold from a safe distance, Abubaker was experiencing them directly. I want to start off, I should mention as well, Abubaker wrote an absolutely incredible piece for Dropsite about his decision to leave Gaza and how painful it was, how difficult it was, and I'd encourage you to all read it. And I'm hoping to discuss that with you maybe a little bit later. But I think before that, I'd like to ask you about your experiences growing up under occupation. Could you maybe talk about what life in Gaza was like for you growing up there to get things going?
Okay. So first, thank you so much all for coming. It's really my pleasure to be here. So I'm sure not all of you, probably all of you, know that Gaza has been a constant blockade, a very stifling blockade since 2006. And at that time, I was only 4 years old. So growing up in such a very deadly environment where wars and escalations were happening very, very continuously was an incredibly difficult and arduous journey because, you know, imagine yourself being stuck in a very tiny swathe of land of around 365 square kilometers where your food is being controlled by the Israelis, your water is being controlled, everything about it. It's not just, as people say, it's an open-air prison, to be honest. It's a closed-air prison because you can't really get out at all. You need the permission of the Israelis to get out of Gaza, and that's what really happened with me when I left 3 months ago. So growing up under occupation means that you actually have no kind of freedom at all, and you are like an animal being fed every single day to be slaughtered in one of the wars or one of the escalations. And just to let people know, there have been 4 wars, predominant wars before this genocide, and for me they were many genocides, because in those wars in total there are more than 4,500 people who have been killed and over 1,500 children who have been murdered by Israel. So Israel has not been killing children since October the 7th. Israel has not been blocking the aid into Gaza and food into Gaza since October the 7th. And the main outlets, the main sources of entertainment people have, and teenagers like me at that time had, or young men had, was just to go to the sea. And the sea, where you go to the sea, you would see Israeli naval forces dotting along the coastline. And if you just surpass a certain line, you will be shot at. And you will have restaurants and you will have stadiums. So you don't have any kind of dignity. You don't have any kind of freedom. There's no way to live at all. So I'm 22 years old, and particularly during the last 3 months, and I'm keeping reiterating that because it's really important. I am not 22 years old. I'm 3 months old, because I'm really lying to myself saying I'm 22 years old, because when you call someone he's a certain age, it means that he's left, but I haven't left, so it's all been death, destruction, wars, dehumanization, and you can't find anything. And just to put some words in the context, because it's really important, before this genocide, there was an unemployment rate of up to 85% among the population. There was an impossibility that young men and women could marry together because of the blockade on Gaza. And at the same time, I'm not shy to say that, but my family couldn't really provide me with my tuition fees at university because they were very expensive. And the vast majority of people were living in dilapidated houses and very, very flimsy bases on very very, very empty pieces of land, sometimes in just one room. This is how people were living. So for people thinking that there was a life before October the 7th, because I know this idea has been circulating around over this particular time or course of this genocide, that Gaza was living a luxurious life before October the 7th. No, we were not living a luxurious life. We're not living even, but because we had one eye to see with before the genocide, and now we don't have eyes to see with. We're saying that we wish we could go back just the least was. So it was hell, but now it's just more than hell. It's what people are going through. But the food that we had was even sometimes expired before this genocide, and a lot of people could not afford the meals. There were a lot of people who couldn't afford their daily meals at all, and they were working many, many hours for absolutely nothing. And most graduates were ending up just on the streets and having a makeshift store where they sell goods or other things, or probably sandals or boots or newspapers or anything. That's how most graduates ended up. But the thing here is that before the genocide, people were not very careful. They were not paying attention. And then we had to be genocided and exterminated just so I'm not saying about you, but all people, just so they understand or they know what our plight is. But even though this happened, unfortunately, there are governments who don't respond. And I know how great you are, but I think the Irish government has failed you.
The work that you've done about the ongoing genocide and about the occupation has been absolutely outstanding. And, you know, it really does it's radically different from what one usually reads about Gaza, about Palestine, about the Middle East in general. I think, Ryan, I'm hoping to bring you in here. I want to talk to you a little bit about the role that Western media has played in, one, I suppose, laundering the genocide, but also laundering the state of Israel itself as a project, as well as, I'd say, virtually every crime it's committed in the time that it's been an entity. So I'm wondering, in terms of how Western media talks about Israel, talks about Palestine, have you noticed a difference since October 2023? And I'm also interested to hear your thoughts. How much of what we see, isn't just people accidentally getting things wrong, but it's media functioning as it should, and manufacturing consent that serves Western power and Western interests.
So I think the 21, 22 months of this genocide are changing how Israel is reported on in the United States in fundamental ways. It will be different going forward than it was before. The fact that, and we can talk about this later, that the voters within the Democratic Party now, when they're polled, are you more sympathetic? They ask these very bland questions to say, do you sympathize more with Israel or with the Palestinians? But they've been asking it that way for 50 years, so they keep asking it that way, so that they can get a baseline. And support for Israel is absolutely plummeting across the board, but particularly among Democratic voters. It's now something like, the most recent poll, something like 83% of Democratic voters saying they were more sympathetic towards the Palestinians. Republican voters who are under 40 are heavily leaning now towards the Palestinians in those questions. Independents the same, 60, 70% plus. So older Republicans are the only what you would call regular people, regular voters, who remain supportive of Israel in the United States. There isn't really a democracy in the United States that operates with any swiftness. But over time, there is a connection between public opinion and what politicians do, because this opens up for an opportunistic politician the chance to jump in and be and be a pro-Palestine, say, presidential candidate or senatorial candidate. And they might not be personally, they might not care one way or the other, but poll numbers that are that stark create opportunities for ambitious politicians.
Yeah.
When it comes to journalism, the world of journalism is collapsing in the United States too. You basically have cable news and then the New York Times, and almost everybody else has faded away. And then you have alternatively the rise of alternative media, which is now almost at parity, like 50-50 maybe. Like alternative media, including podcasts, YouTube, sites like DropSite, collectively probably have half, are about responsible for half of the influence of the public.
Yeah.
And Israel is losing that half, like overwhelmingly. They're like the Joe Rogans and like that, and those are kind of the median, understood by politicians to be the median voters. Somebody like a Joe Rogan who doesn't have a politics that makes sense to people who like think hard and read and do theory and all that sort of thing. But we're not the median voter like he is. He's over here on some stuff. He's over here on some stuff.
Yeah.
And when he looks at that, he's like, "You're just killing children. This is wrong."
Sure.
But for the New York Times and cable news, it remains taboo to be even neutral on the subject, and it's deliberate. It's chilling. Their lines are drawn. You're told out loud in the newsrooms. We're not, and reporters just understand, like, this way leads career death, and so it's just easier for them to just go a different direction, not even talk about it.
Yep.
So the incentive among people who might do good journalism is to just not touch it, which then leaves actual Zionists, because there's nothing there. There's this odd situation in American journalism where you're supposed to be objective. If you're an outspoken Republican or Democrat or like, say, abortion foe or abortion supporter, like, you wouldn't say that in the newsroom and then report on that. The exception is Zionism. Zionism is completely acceptable as a bias inside newsrooms. And so because all the other reporters don't want to go anywhere near it, it's just left to them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I suppose I find personally objectionable about some of the coverage in the mainstream in outlets like the New York Times is that it allows actors that are operating in bad faith, like the Irish government, to present some very, very tepid gestures, some very, very tepid symbolic gestures towards the Palestinians as acts of radical solidarity. Everybody in this room is going to know about the planes that land in Shannon. They're going to know about the Israeli bonds being sold in the central bank. So we don't need to explain any of that. But Catherine, this is where I'd like to bring you in. I'm hoping to. Why do you think it is there is this huge disparity between the rhetoric and the words of the Irish government and their material actions? Because I know this is something you've been bringing up in the Dáil for some time now.
Yeah, I use both.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, this is the first time I've been in a sauna with all my clothes on. A communal sauna at that. Yeah. I don't mean to be flippant. I don't know where to go with this, really, because it's so overwhelming to listen to yourself here. I don't know what words to follow. I don't know how we've come to the stage where we're hearing that description and trying to explain it. Something has gone horribly wrong with humanity, with the narrative. And you're asking me directly about the government. I actually think the government believe their own rhetoric to a certain extent. I think the government believe their rhetoric to a certain extent. I think they actually believe they're doing something and they're the best boys in the class or the best girls in the class. And they've told us that repeatedly for fear we didn't understand it the first time. And so we've reduced the world to them and us. We're really back to that, them and us. We're back to you're with us or against us. and it's frightening actually to watch it on a daily basis. And if we look at Palestine, well before the 6th of October in 2023, as has been set out, the slaughter was going on one way or another. And when Hamas went over the border, we had to continuously, every time we spoke, condemn that, like the refrain in the Rosary. We had to say absolutely and give that refrain to legitimise what we were going to say. Some people were more courageous than I and said they wouldn't condemn it. I actually had no difficulty condemning it because I was horrified at the violence, as I am with all violence. However, as we all know here, history did not begin on that day. But we were never allowed to give a context. That was not permitted in the Dáil without over and over condemning the attack. And of course, context is very important. And so we're not allowed to do that, and we've struggled to do that. And I want to thank you, because you have no idea the importance of your protest and all the protests that have taken place over the country. It's really, really important. You mightn't think it, but it is having an influence on politicians. However, I don't know how long we can keep on with a genocide going on in front of our eyes. The word ironic is not the right word, but just last week we had a minute's silence for Srebrenica, rightly so. But we made no connection with the ongoing genocide in Palestine. And so there's a disconnect all of the time. And you ask me, how do we move from the government's rhetoric? There's a complete disconnect on so many levels between the government, who think they're doing fantastic, and the actual feeling on the ground. So in my time in the Dáil, Amnesty published their report, and they said there was an apartheid regime being operated by Israel. And our government told us they were uncomfortable with the word apartheid. They actually said, we don't really want to talk about that, uncomfortable with that word. So we let that go. And then 6 human rights organisations were described and designated as terrorist organisations. We let that go. We waited for the evidence, the government said, but there was no evidence ever produced. And then we watched the slaughter of men, women and children, of journalists. And I don't need to say all of this, but it's important to say it, because we're actually watching the slaughter. We're watching the UN being dismantled. We're watching language becoming meaningless. I never understood Kafka when I was doing German. I wasn't able to. I fully understand Kafka now, I can tell you, after my years in the Dáil since 2016. Things just happen. Things just happen. Things are just happening in Palestine. Has nothing to do with Israel, really. And that, so I struggle. I have read everything I possibly can. I came from a background of Leon Uris, Exodus, Mila 18, I think. I wanted to go to the kibbutz. Let me say there isn't an anti-Semitic bone in my body. I wouldn't tolerate it. But that's the background I came from. And I've made a journey in trying to understand Palestine and read everything I can. The latest, I had the privilege of launching a book in Galway by Fintan Drury. I recommend it. So where am I going with this? We have no choice but to speak out. We're at a point in history where we really have to use our voices to make language mean something, to make our actions mean something. And when we try that, we're demonized, we're isolated. All the tricks of the book to do that with the help of a media that's colluding. So I thank you very much, because it's not easy to provide an alternative media. But it's essential, because we're not going to get it from the leadership in the Dáil, and we're not going to get it. And I'll finish just maybe, misinformation and disinformation. And I tend to laugh nearly hysterically when I hear that, about the government bringing in legislation or something to counter disinformation. In my experience, most disinformation comes from governments, from institutions who protect themselves in a self-serving manner and a narrative all the time. And that consensus mentality, to me, is the greatest threat to democracy. And so if we go back, and I'll finish on this, the banking inquiry, Nyberg did his banking inquiry and published his report, and what jumped off the page was the consensus mentality that allowed the banking crisis. And fast forward to the 2025, and the same mentality is evident in relation to the Children's Hospital, the various debacles in Dublin. And I sit on the Public Accounts Committee. I've read all the reports, and the biggest thing was the absence of questioning. That's what led to all of these very, very serious issues, neglect of children, the absence of questioning and a consensus mentality. So on one level, I don't wish to add to your despair in this sauna in here, we've learned nothing. On the other hand, I learn all the time, because it's the only thing we have left is to keep learning, keep acting and using our voice, because we have to give hope. We have to stand with the people of Palestine, because if we let it happen, there's serious consequences for us as a nation and as for humanity. Where are we going if we let this happen? Garmak.
Speak up. Sorry, can everybody hear me?
Because there's so many people here, like people in the back, so
Right.
everyone has to make
Okay, yeah.
speak from the diaphragm.
A few weeks ago, I went to an exhibition of Palestinian art. It's very good. A lot of very talented artists involved, and the organisers spoke with a guy who is a painter. He's from Gaza, and he now lives in France. He described an image which has stayed with me probably in the 4 or 5 weeks since I attended the event. He was a painter, and somebody he knows sent him a photograph. His house had been bombed, and there was debris of his artwork, paintings he'd done, strewn in the streets. And desperate and starving people were burning his artwork in order to use it as fuel to cook. I can't get that image out of my head because I think it kind of sums, in a strange way, it kind of sums everything up. But genocide isn't just about killing a lot of people, it's a complete erasure of their history, of their culture, of every expression that they've made, that people have made while they were on this planet. It's the values that and the forces that are driving this genocide are antithetical to everything that human life should be about. Abubaker, I want to bring you back in here. I suppose, when you see, I can't stop thinking the country that I live in made that image a real thing, largely because of political cowardice. And I'd like your opinion on, I suppose, broadly, since you've arrived here, do you have a sense of, or any thoughts on the complicity of the Irish government, the reasons why their words aren't matched by their actions? How do you feel about, or do you have a sense of the role that Ireland is playing in what's happening in Gaza at the moment?
So I think, in my opinion, that, since I've arrived here, and just to let people know that the most well-known European country or Western country that Gazans know is Ireland, by the way. There's so much love to you, so much really hope in you from Gazans, and they're always talking about you. And this hasn't started since this genocide started in October, but it's always been durable for many years, and we're very well aware of that. But I think since I've arrived here, one thing the Irish government is quite worried about is that it is very pressured by the protests, but what we're seeing every single day, from protests, calls to end the apartheid regime, to pass the Occupied Territories Bill, and to cut the Israeli bonds and everything. I am aware of that. But I think, in my opinion, the only obstacle that the government has is America, because it doesn't want to it doesn't want to make America angry with it, and Israel controls America, not the other way around. So the Irish government is, because there are a lot of investments here from Americans in this country, and we're all aware of that, and I've seen that, and I've read about it. But also, this government doesn't what it's all doing is just pleasing the United States and the U.S. administration, and that if we make the U.S. angry, we can't attack Israel, or we can't do whatever we want. So, but we have to be really aware of what it means. I don't think any of you is happy that your airspace is allowed to be used to transport fighter jets from America to Israel to kill and bomb children. I don't think any one of you is happy with that. I don't think that those politicians were still voting for a genocide over the Israeli bones, or are saying mere platitudes. And particularly the Irish newspapers here, particularly the Irish Times and the RTE, who are still producing stories justifying the ongoing slaughter that we're seeing every single day. No one should be allowed to accept this. So what Palestinians need from the government, because in the end there is hope in people who still care. There is hope in people who still, who still have a heart, a pure heart about the plight of an entire population. And think about it, which part of this world is being bombed? Which part of this world is suffering? Which part of this world is being starved? Which part of this world is being exterminated every single day? It's only Gaza. So why are we not having just the mere rights of any human beings around the world? Why this Irish government, which knows the meaning of colonization, which knows the meaning of starvation, which knows the meaning of imperialism, it knows everything about that because it has been colonized by Britain. So it knows everything. So why this government is still not acting? Because in the end, Gaza is the prologue, and then everything will happen. And you know that Britain is funding this. Britain is the most complicit probably country in this genocide after the U.S. administration or after the United States. So what Palestinians need from the government, from this government, is just to listen to its people, as I told you. Like, pass the Occupied Territories Bill, cut the Israeli bonds. It's not important. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world. And just listen to your people. It's enough. It's enough slaughter. So this complicity, just to allow in the Schengen airport, allow fighter jets without even interrogating them, without even stopping them, without even asking them anything, but rather you will see people saluting them there in the airport, and this is just absolutely not something that you really want. So what we all want from this government is just to listen to its people. If you don't want to help, the least you can do, don't contribute to killing us. That's all we want as Palestinians.
Maybe Catherine, you could speak to that question about the role of the U.S. And then, if you did become president, my understanding is it's a pretty ceremonial position. But in that ceremony, there could be interactions with the Vice President of the United States, the President of the United States, if there are meetings. Would you take meetings like that, or how would you use the office to try to get the yoke of the U.S. off of Irish government so that it could have a more democratic connection to its public?
Hello, am I speaking from the diaphragm? Yeah, it's quite a complex question. Yeah, I'll do my best. Where do I go with this? I am who I am. I can't pretend. My only strength is my honesty and what I feel, and I do my best to educate myself and reflect and speak. So it seems to me I have no choice but to use my voice to speak out. I can't be presumptuous enough to jump ahead being president. I'm not trying to avoid your question. It's certainly, let me take it before then. I think, as you've said, we're absolutely intricately bound up with America. They determine our policy. We're allowing the bullies to determine our policy. So we have a bully in America who changes his mind But the problem didn't start with the bully in America who changes his mind every 5 minutes, every day. It started before that, when the Democrats failed to see what was happening and when they failed to see people turning away from the Democrats, and they failed to analyse it. If we come back here, the government is out of touch. They simply don't realise the strength of outrage on the ground, not just in relation to the genocide in Palestine, but in relation to war, the normalisation of war, the normalisation of genocide, the normalisation of homelessness, of a housing crisis, all of which shouldn't be normal. And people are outraged on the ground and are crying out for solutions. And we have the solutions. But the narrative from the advisors and from the neoliberal ideology is very, very strong with the help of the press. So if we go back to Ireland, Ireland has done very well by its government in terms of the recognition of Palestine. However, I'm on record for saying they're recognising Palestine when it's almost destroyed. So while they're clapping themselves on the back, in one sense, it's easy to understand them because they are top of the class compared with other countries, including Arab countries. Yeah. They are top of the class. So they see themselves as doing very well. What we see is democracy in peril, because we either agree with the narrative that we need to be very careful with America, and we heard the ambassador, I think the American ambassador to Israel, telling us we were intoxicated on our own narrative. So, but we need to stand up because we have everything to lose if we don't. Whether I do that now as a candidate for the presidency and in the best way I can if I was president, certainly. And under the Constitution, the role of the president is set out and it's narrow enough. The symbolism of it is very important because, as we know in this country from Northern Ireland as well, symbols are powerful and they can be used. So the symbolic role can be used. And I must comply with my duties if I was there under the Constitution and by law. However, one of the articles gives the President specific role in relation to the welfare of the people of Ireland. And that's quite a broad part in the Constitution. The person becoming President takes a public vow, absolutely a solemn promise to serve the people of Ireland and the welfare of Ireland. And so I don't think the welfare of Ireland is served by us joining warmongers, by adding to the military-industrial complex. I think we have everything to lose and nothing to gain by increasing the. Of course, we need to look after our defence forces. So let me get that on the record. But joining in the boys' club to back up the profit-driven arms industry is not in our interest. And we have everything to lose by doing that. We have to use our voice for peace. Will I do that if I was elected and had the privilege of being president? You couldn't stop me. You couldn't stop me using my voice for peace. Stop me as a mother of two children who are grown up and are two men now, so they're not around and they're not embarrassed by that. But once a mother, always a mother. I'm horrified that we would be using war as a way to achieve peace. It's back to front. So we should be working, and that's what I would do as a president, working to make the Republic mean something, working towards a united Ireland, with consent and recognising diversity and using my voice, but more importantly, acting as a role model. That's a bit pretentious, but enabling and empowering people on the ground to use their voices, whether that's for peace or to do what they want to do. It is vital. And as I said earlier on, we're at a turning point. So we need people to take courage in their hands and use their voices. Consensus is not healthy. Dissent is very good. And diversity and the cherishing of diversity, it's absolutely vital for a functioning, healthy democracy.
Yeah, like it's very important, I think, to have a president who is promotes human rights, promotes social democracy, and so on. Ryan, just for just for context, I suppose presidential elections in Ireland it turns into a kind of a dogfight about what kind of values we want to promote as a country. Abroad, there's a cohort of people. They're not a majority, but there's a significant cohort of people who believe that the president should primarily be a kind of a business person, somebody who represents us on the golf course, who's all about Ireland Inc.
I'm finished.
And to give you a sense of the kind of guys, I mean, there was a guy called Sean Gallagher, right, who is a judge on Dragon's Den, which I think is a different name in America. He ran in 2011 and nearly won, and he ran again in 2018. And he was asked during a televised debate, "Okay, Sean, we haven't seen or heard from you in 7 years. What have you done for the betterment of the country during that time?" It was like he didn't understand the question. He was genuinely flabbergasted. He was like, "Nothing. What are you talking about? Why would I do that?" So it's important that somebody with the background of Catherine, I think, represents the country, and that's what Michael D has done. But I want to move on. I want to talk a little bit about solidarity and direct action. And I want to bring you back in, Abubaker, and talk about, when you were living in Gaza, now that you're outside, I mean, talking about it is very important. But in terms of expressions of solidarity, what matters to you the most, and what is your sense matters the most to people in Palestine?
Well, I've always said that for us, like, every symbol of supporting Palestine really means a lot and encourages us to continue to hope and to continue to endure. But as a matter of fact, you have to know that we can't just continue talking and reporting or whatever. There has to be a solution. There has to be an action, as she said, to stop what is happening and to stop the slaughter and the starvation that is going on. And I just received a call and various messages since the morning about the situation in Gaza. Who would really afford the life for you buy a slice of onion for $5, a slice of an onion? Who would afford the life when you go out in the street to bring a bag or a kilogram of flour for more than 45 euros? Who would afford a life like this? So as he said, it's not just about the killings. If it is only about the killings and the slaughter that might be handled, but at the same time, of course, we can't handle slaughter. But at the same time, how people are living in Gaza. Would you go to a market and then the salespeople that would start shooting at you? Is that something that you can really absorb as a human being? Is that something that you can really accept as a human being? Would you really be telling your children when you go home now that your dinner for today is bit food? Is that something you would accept as a human being? And at the same time, would you go home and then tell your children you can't go outside and you have to stay at home because there are viral infections all around and you're living beside rivers of sewage and garbage and pools of stagnant garbage all over? Is that something you would really accept? So what we're seeing, we really appreciate every sort of solidarity of what we see in every single day here in Ireland, all over the country, the globe. But why do you want us to be as gracious victims? Why do you want us to be just, dying very gently, very kindly? We can't really allow this. There has to be a solution for the children. There have to be many solutions to save humanity. We all have failed it. Like, it's been 21 months, and as I just mentioned, Gaza is the only sufferer all across the globe. Until what time, until when are we going to accept that? Protests haven't worked. They work at some point. Other actions haven't worked. There has to be someone who steps up in the way and stops Israel from doing what it's doing. But you can't really let people and hold them off in just a tinier swathe of land. Right now, Gaza has been reduced to 18%, where people are living, where around 2 million people are living. It's like a can of tuna. That's how they are living at the moment. There's no food, there's no water. People drink contaminated water. So our solidarity must be by ensuring that sanctions and actions can be guaranteed. Other than that, all this, with all due respect, is just a mere facade. We can't do it. And don't look. The Irish, when they were liberated, they were not gentle victims in 1916, at the time of the Easter Rising. They were not gentle victims. They were not polite victims. They were not crying for food. No, they went and got their own freedom. That's how they did it. So don't expect Palestine to be the same way. Does Palestine have a right to defend itself or not? This is the question. Or we have another equation. Does it have a right to defend itself? So we have to support Palestine's independence, Palestine's freedom and self-determination and right to self-defense. Or would you want Palestine to be wiped off the map and just say, look, we really forgot about it because, we wanted them to be gentle victims or something. That's how we want to do it. So our solidarity must be growing every single day. And this hope and this support can be growing and can be turning into much more actions that we can see every day. So to stop this ongoing slaughter. And this is something where people in Gaza do have hope in you. So that's what people are talking about. They just talk about, feel their pain. As I told you, go back home, tell your children or tell yourself, I'm going to eat pet food today. I'm not going to drink water. I'm going to have water from the sewage and I'm going to drink it today. Would you accept that? So that's how we want it. It doesn't just end with one session. It doesn't just end with one time. Okay, we talked about Gaza and that's it. I wouldn't agree. If we were you, finally, I promise you 100%. If we were you and you were us and we wish nothing for you, we wish you a prosperous, a peaceful, the most prosperous life on the planet. That's what we are wishing you every single day. We thank the government for being, not the government, sorry. We thank the people to be here. We thank the people to be here with us. We thank you for the hospitality and everything. But at the same time, just feel our pain. That's all we want from you. To end it, we must stand together. It's not just, it doesn't end with one session. It does end how you feel about it, how you go with it, what Palestinians are going through. And that's how we can make sure that we can do something just for the sake of humanity. Think about it this way. Do Palestinians need to dream to live? And why all the word is living to dream?
Ryan, you mentioned earlier some polling that's indicated a sharp decline in support for the State of Israel and a decline in its perceived legitimacy. We were just talking a moment ago about solidarity. Something that has been going on now for some time is the argument has been lost. There is no defense for what's happening for the project of the State of Israel. So what we're seeing now are increasingly authoritarian measures, attacks on protesters, criminalizing people, labeling them terrorists, attacks on the free press, people like Asa Winstanley in Britain from the Electronic Intifada, Palestine Action, and so on. And I'm just wondering, working in Dropsite, from what can you give me your thoughts on these attacks, what it means for democracy, so-called Western democracy in the US and Ireland, and what, if anything, can be done to try and what if anything can be done to sorry, what?
You have to go.
Do you have to go? Oh, okay. All right. Everyone, give a round of applause for Catherine Conley and Fortis Yes to leave us. Thank you so much, Catherine. We're going to keep going for at least a few minutes anyway, and then we'll do questions. But I suppose working in an independent outlet and one that's critical of Israel, but you're operating in an environment that is increasingly hostile to free expression. What's that like? What are some of the experiences? What's it like if you publish a story that's, say, damning of the US government, damning of Israel? How does that play out?
The immediate thing that has become different since the Trump administration took office has been the relationship between the crackdown on speech and immigration status. And so frequently, we will have to determine, which reporters can be assigned to which particular investigations or pieces based on immigration status, which was never ever something that was even remotely considered to be a possibility of something you had to think about in the United States. The idea that, so for now, if you're here on a work visa or a student visa, we're not going to have you reporting your name. You can maybe work on the story, but we're not going to put your name on the story. I mean, you can if you want, but nobody so far has been like, yeah, I want my name on that story, because they have been efficient at directly targeting people who are here on visas and are critical of Israel. Just strip the visa, send them home. Detain them first for the extended period of time. Then the question is, we have another status that we have in the United States. It's called permanent resident, which is the colloquial name for that is a green card holder. And because they went after Mahmoud Khalil, turns out that was a paperwork problem on their end. They hadn't checked. They thought he was on a student visa. And so after they realized that he was a green card holder, a permanent resident, they then had to kind of retcon, back end a justification for why it actually is okay to also apply their laws to green card holders, which so far they're kind of failing with him. He's finally free, but his fight is not over. And so that kind of threat is still out there. Then the next one that they're rolling out is denaturalizing citizens. So some of the reporters that we work with, have become citizens recently, and they are now threatening. And they probably have done this to people that we don't know about yet, but because this is moving so quickly, looking back in their paperwork and trying to find, you said you lived at this address in 2017, but accordingly by in May, but actually you left in April. That means you lied on your citizenship application, and so we're denaturalizing you, and we're kicking you out of the country, but all of it associated with Israel. Right. Lately, they have backed off of that. Interestingly, like even among their own base, like they're going after mass deportation, but they're no longer going after student protesters with the zeal that they were before. Like that. They haven't announced that they've backed off it, but they're just not doing it like they were previously. And I think they were getting an enormous amount of blowback, and they didn't want the censorship question to interfere with the mass deportation question. They want a clean mass deportation. So that's my sense now, that they're kind of backing off of it a little bit. Yeah. But not the draconian authoritarianism.
Yeah. I suppose it's one thing. It's very hostile in the U.S. To doing stories that are critical of its foreign policy or Israel. But it's nothing compared to what you experienced when you were working as a reporter in Gaza and bringing us stories about what's happening, images of the atrocities, people's stories. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the dangers that you faced and the hostility from the IDF? I mean, it's just left to Palestinian journalists. They won't let Western journalists even in there. So maybe talk a little bit about some of your experiences and what it was like. I know you used to, or you still do a little bit, write about football, but circumstances were such that you had to change what you write about. So maybe you could talk a little bit about changing brief, as it were, and some of your experiences reporting on the genocide, as well as your difficult decision to leave Gaza. What was your question?
So, I'll start with the decision to leave because I know there are many mothers here who have children, and I know there are many fathers here who have children as well. And I know there are many sons as well here and many daughters, so that's why I really want to start with this. I never wanted to leave. I had the chance to leave numerous times in Gaza, but I actually never wanted to leave. I never thought it was a wise idea because, I wish to be much more loyal to my country, much more loyal to my hometown, to my city, to my cause. But at the same time, there was a time that came after smear campaigns from the Israelis over the last couple of weeks before I left, claiming everything. You know, everyone is Hamas. Like, I'm sure if an Israeli knows about this place, the bar is Hamas as well. So everything is Hamas for them. So they were claiming that, and for them, you know, when there's a smear campaign, it is taken very seriously, and they have targeted. They have this pattern of targeting journalists in Gaza, and one of them was Hassan Aslayeh. They made a smear campaign against him, and they assassinated him inside the hospital after they injured him in a separate attack. So I remember, like, when I had a situation with my family, and there was my father and my siblings and my mother around me, and they all told me, "We think if you stay, we will be killed with you. So just leave." I mean, imagine, like, I'm not sure if any of you has a family member here, but imagine if you tell someone right now, like, leave, I don't want you to be here because I'm going to be killed with you. So there was no chance to leave at all. And even taking this journey outside Gaza and through the Israeli-Czech borders, it was a very, very, I must say, very reckless risk, I might say. But at the same time, somehow I miraculously survived from their hands because I was really going to be detained. But anyways, this, like, you can't really stay in a place where you feel, where your home country and your own family feels that you are a danger to them. You can't stay in this place at all. And regarding the changing,
Actually, can I say one thing on that?
yeah, sure.
And this is actually somewhere where I think the public can play some small role. What Abubaker is saying is exactly right, that we have seen a pattern play out many, many times where leading kind of Zionist accounts that are not employed by the Israeli government but are very supportive of them, associated. I'm sure you have them here in Ireland. We've got them, ours in the US. There's the UK versions. We all know who these folks are. They will start to identify a particular journalist as Hamas or as whatever. And that is the beginning of a targeting campaign. They spend a few weeks doing that to then soften up the ground, and then they target the journalist at home, kill them, and then say, well, we have eliminated a terrorist. And so, and this was starting to happen right in the weeks leading up to his departure. What you can do is push back. If you ever see any Zionist accounts doing that to journalists who are still alive, the more you can push back against that and back them off, might do something to disrupt the plan, because they want it the ground softened so that they can justify what they do. Doesn't mean they won't do it, but they have many targets that they're trying to kill, and so if it can push them lower down, it can do something. I don't know. Maybe that's crazy, but
Yeah, I think it's been happening not just since this.
the doctors.
Yeah, not about this. Also about the doctors. As I told you, like, everyone is Hamas in Gaza. Everyone is a terrorist. So even the children, and we've seen the celebration by many of the Israelis. It's a very psychopathic society, to be honest. That we've seen the celebration of the killing of children many times over the recent months and over the past 21 months. So you're right in this. If there is a campaign, that means the start of a target on any of the journalists. But regarding the other part of your question, you know, some people, I don't think that any one of you would say that Abubaker dreamed to be, or anyone in Gaza dreamt to be, a war correspondent. I don't think anyone would love to be a war correspondent or something. So when I was doing football, but I was also talking about Palestine and Gaza because it's been occupied and it's been terrorized all the time, bombed and whatever you want. So actually in my life, like, I very rarely use the words kill, bomb, slaughter, exterminate, genocide, whatever. So this sort of vocabularies wasn't even on my list, and I wasn't even well aware of them. So I was doing football. I was a Chelsea supporter in England, and after it took sides with Israel, it's such a disgusting club, by the way. But the thing is that it took sides with Israel in the early week of October the 7th, and just humanized Israeli and forgot about at that time there were more than 4,000 people who have been killed in Gaza by Israel just in the first week. So I stopped supporting this club, of course, and I just wrote an article about it, like named "My Boyhood Club Wants to Kill Me." So when the genocide started, there was no point. Like, why should I keep talking about football while all people around me are being killed, hunted down, and everything? Hunted down, sorry, and everyone is around is being killed. So I mean, there's no point at all. So I had to change, and because I learned English when I was 14 years old, I learned it on my own from football. I had just to stop it all and start talking about it. I never wanted to do so, to be honest. Like, I'm not a man who talks about wars and who talks about things, who talks about politics or anything, but I've been through it many times, and I knew at that time that I could communicate with the Western audience, and I could really bring a message out, and that's why I had to put everything aside and started doing this. But regarding when it comes to the challenges that you're talking about, every time you go outside to live, I was a digital and TV reporter at the same time. I was an only digital reporter. So every time when you go outside, you know it's going to be the end. And in the last week before the genocide, I remember one of the stories that has hit me was Shaban I'm sure some of you know about him, the young man who was immolated in the backyard of Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah. And that strike, I was harshly awakened on it, so it was a very terrifying strike, and then some explosions followed, and this was one of the most devastating stories. Imagine that you're going to sit with a family whose son was immolated, was burned alive in front of their eyes, and his siblings were also burned alive. So how would it be just to sit with his family? It was the most devastating piece I've ever written in my life, probably. So during this time, when you go outside, you just feel that this is going to be your last. And in the last week, like, sometimes you have that environment around you that it's enough. And the last week, in the last couple of days in particular, there were 7 attacks that happened in my hometown. And in 4 of them, I was just from here and nearly 50 meters away or 100 meters away. So that was a sign there's no way that you can stay. So I just had to leave because the attacks were intensifying all the time. Israel every day publishes new evacuation orders. So every time you go outside, it's the end. You're not better than the other journalists. And literally, when I was in the journalist tent, because do you think we were working in 5-star hotels or something? We were working in makeshift tinted workplaces, and sometimes the internet goes off, and sometimes you have to wait for a week or 2 weeks just to make it. But every time, like, we were in the tents, and we know, like, many times at Al-Aqsa Hospital, because it has been attacked 8 times so far, of course. In those 8 times, I was here, and it's another room. It's just outside this place that it was hit. So I was very lucky to have survived all this. But also at the same time, you have to talk about the grief. I remember one time I had a live report at 3 p.m. and at 2:30 p.m. my cousin and his son were killed by a drone strike. And I just had to go on and say, I'm the griever, I'm the mourner, and I have to mourn them. And after the live report, I went to his funeral. To bury him. What should I do? And on another occasion, I had to go, and my aunt's family was wiped out entirely. And then I just had to go and say the same thing, that I lost my family and I'm here and I have to continue. So there was such, I always said to myself, I had to emerge from this with hope. And I'm seeing here in Ireland a lot of teenagers or young men or women complaining about life. Sorry, what are you complaining about? Sorry, like, you have nothing to complain about. You have literally nothing to complain about at all. No one should complain about anything. You shouldn't complain about how much water you drink a day, or if you didn't go outside, or anything. There's nothing that you should complain about. You are living high on the hog, even if you are living in a tent. I'm telling you from now, I really called many people in Gaza, when I was walking the streets of Ireland, and they told me, we wish we were dogs here. We wish we had a tent to live in the streets here. I've never seen a life like this. It's luxurious and the buildings are fussy. All of you are spoiled. All of you. All of you are spoiled. Tell me, what is the thing that you're suffering from here? Do you think you're suffering? I'm not comparing this. I'm not putting this in comparison with the genocide that is unfolding. I'm comparing this with before that. You have parks. One park, the Phoenix Park, is bigger than Gaza probably. The Phoenix Park is bigger than Gaza, and you have it with yellow roses, with the green grass everywhere. And you have bars, you have restaurants. If you don't want this restaurant, you can go to 100 restaurants other than that. You have everything in your life. What are you complaining about? So just be thankful to everything, for everything you have. Be thankful, especially the young men and women. Literally, if you break up or if a relationship doesn't go well with you, this is not the end of the world. People are being killed. No, people are being killed literally. I'm not kidding. People are being killed, they're being hunted down. Their families are being wiped out. And also, just one final point, because probably it's not about Gaza, but for people who really, because I talked to Ryan about it, for people who are quite annoyed with their parents, do you think that is a good thing? That you are annoyed with your parents and you think that you are independent and, strong or whatever? This is not something that you should really be thinking about. People in Gaza, I wish, I'm here for 3 months and I haven't said one word one time, daddy or mommy or whatever. I never said it for 3 months. And some people think their parents are a burden on their lives. That's nonsense. It's literally nonsense. How on earth? I wish I could have a parent, or I wish I could have someone here to be next to me. There's literally nothing that you should complain about. You have to be thankful for everything that you have. And that's what you need to put in your mind. There are people who are being slaughtered. Your parents are the crown of your heads. Forget about your friends. Throw them in the wastebasket, to be honest. Your parents are the top. Your family is the top. That's how it is. A lot of families have been wiped out. We've reported on that. 1,300 families have been entirely wiped out. No one has survived. No one. I wish I could see my aunt. I didn't see it even. Haven't seen it before it was killed. I haven't seen her body. And my friend's body, I haven't seen his body at all. So, just really, 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 if I want something from you, feel our pain and be thankful.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you. It's very, very warm in here. And I am conscious of the time. We are well north of an hour. So do we have time to do some questions? No? We do? Yeah, we're going to do some questions very quickly. If anybody has any, we will get a microphone to you if you come towards it. And they need to hold this as well.
I was at a talk with Bernadette Devlin in Belfast a few months ago, and she said, if you can't get your question out in about 10 or 20 seconds, we're moving on. There's no, more of a statement kind of a thing. We'll go here first, if you can just, speak up.
Yeah. I'll just say thank you, everyone, for a great discussion. My question is for Ryan, just from the American perspective. Talking about something that was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of bedwetting in this country. If we enact the Occupied Territories Bill, if we engage in BDS, then America is going to sanction us or put us on the naughty step or not invite us to the White House for Paddy's Day anymore. From your reporting, from your vibes of the American political system, is this a rational fear on our end?
We'll take 2 or 3 more and then we'll do them all. So we've got one, if someone wants to come up, and because I can't. Yeah. So we've got one about the Occupied Territories Bill and the US for Ryan. We have.
So, my question is also for Ryan, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
How is APAC MAGA dealing with the fallout of the Epstein files?
Something we've been talking about this week. And we'll take one more and then we'll do them in a bunch. Ideally.
Cheers. Just wanted to ask the importance of alternative media, but that can also go 2 ways. Charlie Kirk seems to think he's alternative media in America, and we have our own Philip Dwyers here and the such. How can the public be confident in the proper investigative journalism that the Ditch and Drop Site do? Thanks.
So we've kind of got 3 for Ryan. We want to talk about Epstein, the Occupied Territories Bill, and then maybe Paulie can come in on the importance of, the hopeful importance of the Ditch.
Yeah. On the first one of how credible and serious is the threat, I think it's very credible and it's very serious. I think just recently Trump put like a 50% tariff on Brazil because he was angry about what the Supreme Court was doing to Bolsonaro and some other things. So yeah, I think there would be blowback from the United States. I don't know if it would come over that particular piece of legislation or not, but it certainly might. And so but then I guess Ireland has to decide if that's what it is. Like I've seen museums and I've talked to people here who tell me there was a war for independence and that it's.
That's what I've heard.
Right? There's plaques around here.
Yeah.
So if that's true, then you kind of got to do what you got to do and be an independent country, and maybe play other countries who might also have a lot of influence in the world. But yeah, no, the U.S. is a bully and they're serious. The Epstein files, there was apparently a poll that came out the other day that Republicans are even happier with Trump since the Epstein thing happened. So there's a cult-like mentality around Trump among his base. The podcast world is like losing it on him, and that really matters. It's bad for him. It's bad for J.D. Vance. AIPAC is losing their mind. Who was it? Israel Katz, one of the top Israeli government officials, put out kind of the funniest statement that I've ever seen, where they were like, "We would just like to be clear that the Mossad was not involved with Epstein." Like,
Clears it up.
yeah, okay. Sorry. Like, Jeffrey Epstein, yes. Jeffrey Epstein is not a Mossad agent. I've got the T-shirt. I don't understand why people keep asking me about this. So they are definitely feeling a lot of pain from that, and it might take a while for that to trickle down because there's also still a lot of reporting that can be done on it. Alternative media is essential. It's alternative media and kind of Western critical media that really gave Abubaker a voice, right? I mean, for the most part. I mean,
Yeah, but I worked with the BBC and the Guardian.
Yeah.
Discussed.
Yeah, and with a small team at Dropside, a small team at the Ditch, you can have this exponential impact because you're hitting right at the point of the messaging, and so even if you're only moving it a degree or two, it's right at the source, so that by the time it goes all the way out, it's been moved pretty substantially. So it's the best bang for your buck. It's worth supporting and worth doing, even if we're still getting steamrolled. You have I think much more interesting perspective on media, alternative media, and Western media coming into it and being outside of it. Like, what's your take on how people can shape the media narrative?
So first of all, I think the Irish Times and RT have blood on their hands, 100%. That's the first thing, 100%. They have always been giving consent for the genocide to continue. But the important point, because you're talking to someone who's worked with the mainstream Western media, I've been on CBC News, I've worked with the CBC News in Canada, BBC News, the Israeli Broadcasting Corporation, and I've worked with the Guardian and I've worked with everyone. So I've worked with the mainstream media and I've ended up working with Dropsite News and Electronic Intifada and the New Arab in the UK. That's what I agreed. The problem is that when you work with an organization, there's a lot of lobbying on you not to share your own thoughts. So you can't say what you want, but your mouth is going to be zapped by this organization because you can't say what you want. You have just to abide by the rules, abide by the guidelines. And this is what happened with me, with The Guardian, because when I produced the story the other day, they told me you are anti-Semitic. And they told me that you cheered attacks or whatever, and I never boasted about it. And I never posted something about anti-Semitism or something, but they just made it up. And they told me, delete it and we can go ahead. And I said, you have come to the wrong person. I'm not going to delete anything, and I'm not interested in working with you anymore. So, and with the BBC, it has come to a point that they have been using me for live reports, and after that, you will bring an Israeli to say, I feel sorry for him, but he should blame Hamas. That's how it is. And I told them, this is not the thing how you put it, and they have really come to me like 3 times after that or something, and I refused it, and I then said to them, you're a bunch of war criminals. But the thing is that here, in that when you have an independent media that people support, people can have their own thoughts. In the RTE and the Irish Times, people cannot change it because it's funded by the government. But if it's funded by the audience, they can change it. If there is lobbying, look, there's a lot of lobbying and pressuring on RTE and the Irish Times, but nothing has changed because in the end, it receives funds from the government or from Zionist groups. But the other parts of media, the independent and audience-funded media, the audience can change that. So if Dropside News faces attacks or the Electronic Intifada, they absorb it and they talk to their audience. So you have that channel and that bridge between the audience, directly between the audience and the channel itself. But even though there has been an outrage against all those channels that have been complicit in the genocide and have been fueling it for the past 21 months, nothing has changed at all. Nothing has paid off because in the end, the workers will receive their money, the journalists will receive their money, whether it's propaganda or not. And then the matter is finished. So the importance here is that the audience, build their own networks. The audience builds what they want to hear in a very sensitive, sensible, and fair way. And that's why you should really listen to the likes of Dropside News. You have that reporting. There's unbiased reporting. We're not biased. And there's no need, because you mentioned objectivity about the genocide. What is the meaning of objectivity when you're seeing a live stream genocide? What is the objectivity? Are you going to be objective against the child beheaded? Are you going to be objective against the child shredded into pieces? Is that the meaning of objectivity? Is that the meaning of it? When you're seeing children beheaded and shredded into pieces and emaciated and gaunt and bones and skulls of children everywhere inside the hospital. I was at the hospital. All of the ICUs, all of the wards of the hospitals are filled with the children. Are you going to be objective in that matter? So in the independent media, you would see media that would report on the children. But in the main corporate media or the mainstream media, you would see propagandists just putting up everything, just being afraid for their wages to be docked. And I really hope that we can hold RTE, the Irish Times, I'm working on that. I'm telling you from here, we can hold them accountable one day.
Did we go again? Do you have anyone else you'd like to... Do you want to come on then? And if we have maybe 2 more.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for the work that you do. I wanted to ask you guys about thoughts about sacrifice, because I think this is the main cultural point that the West has not understood in terms of solidarity with Palestine. Ireland also is included in this because the prosperity that Ireland does have and the luxuries that people do have here is very tied up with imperialism, is very tied up with the capitalist system, and what it would mean for us to really stand in solidarity with places in the colonial periphery like Palestine, and how you guys think about sacrifice.
And then, do we have maybe 1 more? We'll take these 2 more.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks. This may be more directed towards Polly, kind of honing in what we talked about previously there about RTE. When it comes to RTE, it seems like their editorial line just doesn't align with reality in a sense when it comes to what's happening in Palestine. I'm just wondering, is that based off of just a herd mentality of legitimacy, or is there something more direct happening there?
I have to go here.
Just a question for Ryan. So the previous Democratic president, I think you could categorize as a genuine ideological Zionist. The current Senate minority leader, Chuck Schumer,
a genuine Zionist. Hakeem Jeffries, maybe a corrupt Zionist. The next generation of democratic leaders, are they going to be corrupt Zionists, ideological Zionists, or will they follow Mamdani's approach in New York?
So we'll go to Abubaker first. Like, what does real sacrifice mean, like, for people like us here in the West? Then we'll go to Paulie about Paulie's favourite news source, RTE. And then we're going to finish up with Ryan talking about, are we going to be corrupt or true Zionists in the US?
Okay, thanks. So, sacrifice, this is a really, really important question, because in the end, power is important to, this is an enemy, a force, a Zionist project, an illegal project, an illicit project that understands the meaning of power. And it was crying when the Iran escalation happened because of the attacks. So when you talk about sacrifice and you talk about the Irish people and Ireland, they understand what the meaning of sacrifice is. There are hundreds, if I may be correct, who have been killed just to liberate Ireland from the British colonialism. And you're right, we're living in an empire that is controlling us, not only Gaza, there's controlling everywhere, and it wants to feel superior over everyone. And that's the thing, like, why I on myself, like on my behalf and anyone in Gaza, who would really be ashamed to die for his homeland or for their homeland. But the thing is that, again, you are like surrounded by everything. You're beleaguered by Israel. You can't let anything in. How can those people sacrifice if they don't have food? There's no meaning to sacrifice when it comes like this. It wasn't like this when the British colonialism happened. There was a famine. That is, yes, that's correct. But it wasn't like, we've never seen something like this before. I don't think history has ever seen something like this before. So when you want to sacrifice something, you need the means to sacrifice. But people are sacrificing their lives every single day. People are still ready to die just for the next generations. People want to live a dignified, a life full of dignity, full of freedom. But it can't happen because it's not only Israel that is killing Gaza. It's not only Israel that is fighting Gaza or committing a genocide in Gaza. It's all the Western countries. So whom we should tailor the message to? That's the question. Should we? It's a very good question. I really appreciate it. But whom should we tailor it to? It should be tailored to the governments. Do you really, as I told you, do you really support Palestine's right to self-defense? Do you really support that? That's the question. But you can't really. You are fighting against the military in a genocide that has the best technologies in the world, that has the most modern weapons all over the globe. So do you want an emaciated and very fragile person or children? Half of the population in Gaza are children. Do you really want them to fight? They can't do anything. It's not within their hands at all. But when the Easter Rising, which was the Up Easter, I think, if I may be correct, in 1916 when it happened, it was a failed attempt. But it led to the freedom of Ireland. It led to it. So in the end, you want to try, you want to sacrifice, children want to sacrifice, but in the end, our souls are not cheap. We have to remember that. We can't just let it out like this and let it go this way, and in the end, like, we're being killed every single day, we're being slaughtered, we're being starved. This is the meaning of sacrifice when Israel is committing a genocide alone, when there is an equal to, like, two sides of the story, and there are two equal sides of the story, but there are not two equal sides of the story. So the world is expecting Palestine to sacrifice out of nothing. Look, be starved, be displaced, be killed, whatever, go to hell, but then sacrifice. You can't really expect that. Give them the means to really do something. And unfortunately, as she said, the Arab regimes have failed us, the Arab countries are failing us, and they are protecting Israel, and they're helping Israel committing a genocide. Western countries do. Tell me, which countries across the globe don't help Israel in committing its genocide? So you're expecting, with 9 billion people around the world, and look at our failure. We couldn't bring this this cup of water into Gaza. And you want the people of Gaza, or 2 million, to sacrifice?
So I think the question whether Democrats will have corrupt Zionists or heartfelt Zionists going forward probably continue to be a combination of the two for a long period of time. Hakeem Jeffries is particularly a fascinating case. I actually looked into his background for my last book, and his father and his uncle were both very hardcore black nationalists, and his uncle was a professor at CUNY who veered way off into the anti-Semitic deep end, and he had tenure at CUNY, at the City University of New York, and became this massive 1990s academic freedom case where everybody said, okay, this is genuinely anti-Semitic, and it was. Like, you read the stuff that he was writing, you're like, oh, okay, that's why we have the word. Like, that's what it applies to here. But academic freedom is important, and you have to defend all speech, no matter what. So he was involved in this controversy. And speaking with people who knew Jeffries when he was growing up, if you notice the route that he took, he went the complete opposite political direction of the generation above him. He was rebelling against all of that and became this corrupt machine functionary for the Democratic Party, which no doubt his father and uncle, would have considered to be, sellout, corrupt institutions. And Jeffries made his support for Israel even more central to his rise than I think, and people who knew him at the time say it was connected to this very weird kind of upbringing that he had. So that's that, and now he's the #1 Democrat in the House of Representatives. Like, it's a very odd situation that we've got with Chuck Schumer over in the Senate. I think over time, the weight of the numbers that I described mean that you're going to get a more balanced approach, which is insane. Like, a balanced approach between, on the one hand, a captive population, and on the other hand, the people doing the genocide against them. But literally, the best you're going to get from Democrats in the future would be objective. To your point, and how do you, like, utterly absurd, but that's what it is.
Thanks. On RTE, I'll keep it short and sweet. Become an embarrassment to itself and everyone around it. No, I'm kidding. You're weak. You're out of control. No. All right. Look, all of the stuff that people say about broadsheet newspapers and how compromised they are, they apply to RTE as well, when really they shouldn't. I mean, George Lee, who was the economics editor of RTE, left the newsroom in RTE and stood for Fine Gael in the general election. And then he just immediately afterwards went back into the RTE newsroom, and everyone was just kind of like, that's absolutely fine by us. Nothing to see here. It also speaks to there's a cozy relationship between, I think, particularly people who write about politics, and people who are in positions of power and authority. Some of you will remember the incident involving Ciara Phelan last year when she called up the newsroom to try and get them to pull a story about Simon Harris turning his back on a voter who had confronted him, demonstrating what he actually thinks about the public and everybody in this room. It says a lot that she felt comfortable enough to do that. Look, on Israel and coverage of Israel, I think it's safe to say everyone here in this room will agree that the national broadcaster has repeatedly disgraced itself. There are reasons for this. There are institutional parameters with regard to opinions that can be articulated, but on a more just kind of base level, RTE uses wire services that are embedded with the IDF and take all of their talking and take the way that the stories are written by people who are using IDF sources, and then RTE run the copy and they don't change it. And then they act shocked and call it an attack on democracy when Sinn Féin calls for a review into how they conducted themselves editorially throughout the genocide. maybe shouldn't go on about this anymore. This is all to say that it's very, very important to support independent media. I think there is an appetite for stories that hold power to account, that challenge authority. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Ryan. I want to thank Abubaker. And it's very hot, so maybe everybody can get a beer and enjoy the rest of the evening. I look forward to talking to all of you as well. Thank you.